Hi, this is the final project presentation for Slash and Slash for social and multiplayer game design. Our group members are Spencer, Mac, Thaden, that's me, Jason, Sawyer, and Vincent. There's our student numbers as well, and that's the order we're presenting in as well as the slides that we're presenting.
There are two major issues with gamification in the learning environment. Firstly, gamification can unfairly harm the education of some users, especially in situations where competition is involved, as that requires a winner and a loser. Additionally, it may be more difficult to motivate instructors to utilize gamification, as it can be more difficult to grade and organize assignments. Overall, gamified systems are much more difficult to work with for those who are not familiar with gamification. Additionally, the benefits may not be seen if students and instructors are having difficulty becoming engaged with the content provided.
Based on prior work in GEN LMS, gamification needs to be properly utilized, otherwise it might as well not be included. If the instructor does not utilize the elements of game design that they are provided with, then they're not going to see any positive effect from the GEN LMS. And what's also found is that grading gamified projects is more difficult than grading traditional projects. We see this because grading them is much more abstract than the traditional means of point-based correcting, where a question gives you right or wrong, because you have to set up checkpoints and things to actually determine how a student should be evaluated. And also, students that are naturally better at video games rather than actually knowing material will have an advantage from just being able to play games even if they know less material than a student that is less good at games but knows more material. Prior work in GEN LMS also shows that microlearning is an extremely effective tool for teaching, because rather than teaching students a huge chunk of material all at once and the student not retaining all that information and just forgetting, what it does, microlearning rather, is that it allows the students to learn small pieces of the material at once, rather than the huge chunks. So what this allows is that the material gets solidified and they retain that material a lot better, because they have gone through the individual components like small chunks rather than just being thrown into one big chunk of learning. There's also two methods of gamified education. Gamification in education. This is where you would take your traditional education and maybe add gamified components, like adding a leaderboard system or adding points, like for completing tasks and stuff, and game-based learning, so where you have an actual game that teaches you things, like the math-based games, where it's mainly a game, but you're doing math at the same time to complete it, which teaches you about the math. And it's been found that the game-based learning is much more effective.
So we want to focus more on cooperation than competition in our system. We don't want to use things like leaderboards, which results in someone being last if someone is first. We want to have a system that allows for cooperation through weekly, like you'll have a partner every week, or students will have partners every week, and it'll change every week so you don't get stuck with someone who's not doing their work, and you can get more familiar with your class that way. And basically the goal is to have a couple tasks every week that are daily tasks that are, or some of the daily tasks that are doable cooperatively, and you get bonus points for that, so you have motivation to cooperate with other students and learn from them as well and interact with them. So you're not just isolated in falling behind. If you are falling behind, you feel like you can talk to someone and try and figure out how to pull yourself ahead again. The gamification system in this is mandatory, but you can use simple games such as, for example, not that this would be a game in it, but it could be Tetris. You could have like the instructor could just make a bunch of questions similar to like a quiz, and once the student gets to a certain point value or clears a certain block, then they will be asked a question and so on. So it'll be a mix of mostly gaming with some learning in there to keep students very engaged the whole time. We also want to have it so these games result in you getting points as well as your own grades getting points, and this should encourage players to or students to want to engage with the system more regularly so they can buy things such as color schemes for the UI or emotes and group chats on the system and stuff like that. We basically want to have players and students either way coming back to play these games when they don't have to for grades. We want to use points to try and keep everything interesting and the same point values across all classes, so you can study in any class and it'll be just as impactful. And we want to do this through daily gamified activities as well as your grades. Your grades will resort in a certain amount of points per percentage that you earn, while daily gamified activities earn you points as well. So you can get bonus points from the cooperative activities, which there are 3 per week to get up to 10 points per week. And you get points at the end of each week based off of how many correct questions you answered that week. And to encourage cooperation as well, you get an extra point just for cooperating, even if you don't get the question right on that day. So it's to encourage talking between peers and keeping a community within all the classes, and it should use like little bits of learning every day, micro learning, to keep students engaged all the time and bring them back so they learn more effectively by learning little bits at a time.
So in terms of monetization, we think it's best to use a yearly subscription service for the GEN. Basically, this allows us to adjust our prices between years if necessary, because costs will be based on the number of students using the system. So at the beginning of the year, schools will send us a list of the students that are applied and registered for this courses, and that way we can adjust the sale price of the subscription based on how many students will be using the system to begin with. It also allows us to offer much more affordable prices for elementary and secondary schools, as they don't run on a tuition system, so their budget is often a lot lower than post-secondary schools like colleges and universities.
We have identified certain key limitations with our solution for the GEN LMS gamification system. The first of which is that we require a lot of effort from our side of things to develop enough varied games for the end users. The second is that our educators will have to put in more effort in order to get the higher results from their students. Also, the rewards that are given out through our gamification systems are not necessarily personalized and may not be desirable by all students. And finally, some students are still not necessarily going to participate in cooperative work, even despite the gamified systems.
Hi, I am Vincent, and I'm here to conclude our project. The conclusion for me is for the future work, and the research could be done into several areas, for example, more preliminary works, and also increased cooperative elements in the system, simplified tools for teachers to develop gamified projects and activities, blending learning into games rather than alternating between a game and a quiz.